Untitled. This is Will Sanchez. I have two very special guests today. Their names are Kimberly Donaldson and Cat Osborne. Kimberly is the Chief Executive Officer and founder of Excelle Sports. Cat Osborne is the Chief Operating Officer of Excelle Sports. What is Excelle Sports? Here's a hint. 40% of all athletes are women, yet the mainstream media only covers 4%. Excelle Sports aims to cover girls from high school, college, post-college, professionals, and Olympics to go where they haven't gone before. I'm thrilled to learn more about Excelle Sports.
Thanks for having us, Will.
A pleasure. Before we go into Excelle Sports, which is relatively new, I think you started it this past February.
Yep.
Before we go into that, let's introduce the audience to you. First with you, Kimberly. Tell us where you were born, something about your growing up years.
Okay. I was born in New York City. I have a family who's been here for many generations. And so I grew up in New York City and have lived here all my life, except going to high school up in New Hampshire, boarding school, college, and then grad school. But otherwise, I've always been a resident of New York City. Grew up in grade school, Cat and I actually, and Cat is my co-founder of Excelle Sports, as well as being COO, but we went to the same grade school.
Really? Did you guys athletically active in those days?
We were very athletically active.
You're Title IX recipients, right?
We are. Absolutely.
Early on.
We both played 3 sports a year in school, all through grade school. Cat stayed at the school. She can tell you her background. But let's say I moved around. My main sports growing up were tennis and then squash, and then I ran. I tried softball. That was not my forte. That was Cat's forte, however. I was great at basketball till 5th grade. I was the 3rd tallest in the grade at 5'1". Never grew after that. Was forced to try gymnastics, but when I had to do things going backwards on a balance beam, I said that just wasn't going to work for me either.
Okay, who forced you? Your parents or your teachers?
The gym teachers, because back then, this was the 70s, we weren't given many options for sports.
Okay.
Let's see.
Actually, our school had a very good gymnastics program, so they did push a lot of girls into it. There was
It
a
just
series
wasn't.
of books at that time written about girls in different sports. There was a very young horse rider, a very young gymnast, and a very young ballet dancer. And the gymnast was a woman who went to the same school we did. So it was a very big program for the 70s.
Okay. What did you major in college?
American Studies.
And which college did you go to?
I went to Yale.
Ah, that's a tough school to get into.
Well,
Your
it
parents
was.
must have been thrilled.
They were happy. I was the first woman in my family to go to Yale after 3 generations of men on both sides, so I was very proud to be the first woman.
Excellent. Were you playing squash and tennis at Yale?
I played squash through Yale, and we were actually national champions one year.
That's an all-around game. I mean, you're
was
running
9
around,
months.
you're using your arms, you have eye-arm coordination. I mean, that's a tough sport. And you said you were part of a championship team?
I was, and the track, I wasn't good enough to run track, and doing 2 varsity sports would have been hard. But the running came in handy because we would run 7 miles one day, 13 the next, training for squash.
Okay. During that time, you were obviously very athletically involved, in good shape. Were you also enjoying watching sports professionally on television? Because
absolutely,
your current job, you must have been something back then must have set you up.
Yep. No, I grew up on watching ice hockey. My father grew up in Buffalo, New York, played ice hockey, taught me ice hockey when I was a kid. He played in college.
All those are men's sports. The only time you really got to see women at all is usually during the Olympics. That was an eye-opener. Wow. They swim, they play tennis, they wrestle, they jump over huge, tall buildings. Every 4 years, the women came out. When I was growing up.
Yep. There'll be, the U.S. Open or tennis tournaments. But other than that, there really was...
That's right, tennis. Billie Jean King was
Chris
very
Evert.
big.
Chris Evert, Steffi Graf,
That's right.
Monica
Tennis.
Seles.
Yeah, when you turn on to sports,
Martina.
it was always baseball, basketball, and for women, I think it was primarily tennis, and then now maybe golf.
Yeah.
But still, statistics you mentioned, well, I mentioned at the beginning, only 4% of women athletes are covered. Well, at some point, you decided to do something about the coverage of women's sports. You founded Excelle this year. So what were some of the key events that led you to this year?
The timing was because I started and run a different company for 10 years. So I like the starting of companies. I like the ideas, the building, the creating. So I wanted to do something new, and I was trying to figure out sort of what the void was out there, what the world needed. And a friend of mine who'd actually played on the teams with me both in boarding school and at college on squash said, what about sports? You're an athlete all your life, you're a crazy sports fan. You're the only person I know who goes to Knicks games by herself because they were so bad a couple of years ago. And so I said, well, that sounds fun, but I'm sure there are plenty of sites. So I got thinking and looking, and then I bumped into my old friend Kat.
Okay.
And I said, God, I have this idea. I don't know if there's anything to it. Got her involved. She said, there must be a site out there for women's sports. Sure enough, there really wasn't.
Okay, well, let's go over to Kat. So, Kat, tell us about where you were born and something about your growing up years.
So I was also born in New York, since we went to the same elementary school. And when you mentioned Title IX, we were actually in an all-girls school. So Title IX didn't impact us the way it would have at a co-ed school because the sports were obviously for women.
Okay.
I did not leave for high school. I stayed and played soccer, basketball, and softball, and went to college for softball, which I made 1 year. And then we played Army, and I figured I was good to go.
Oh, so you played Army?
We played Army in
What's
softball.
that?
The Army, West Point.
Oh, you played against them.
Against Army, I was good.
Okay.
That was the end of my softball career. I went to golf because that was a lot easier.
A lot easier golf.
She's a very
Easy
good
for you to
golfer.
say. That's a tough game,
So
golf.
it was safer
It's safer.
than getting the ball pitched at you very
Okay.
quickly.
Okay. So you guys went to grade school together. I guess you got separated during high school and college. You
Yep.
went to separate ways. Then where did you go to college?
I went to Colgate in upstate New York.
Okay. And what did you study?
I studied art history and economics.
Sounds like great preparation for the work you're doing now as a chief operating officer. All right.
Life takes very strange turns in these days. So
Well, I think what you both are saying is with a good enough education, you can keep on learning and pick up new skills and upgrade, which you obviously be doing every day of your lives,
Right.
which is, speaks well. So after college, you needed to have a career for yourself, or wanted a career. What did you decide to do?
well, right after college, I went for half a master's in, of all things, decorative arts. And then I came back to Dillon Reed on Wall Street and worked as an institutional salesperson there and stayed in Wall Street before I went to business school.
So you were a salesperson.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's good training.
Yep.
So that means selling to
Institutions first and then private clients. So I had global private clients for the people I was working with. And then I went to business school because I wanted to have better understanding of the financial documentations and more of it. And I came out, did research for a year, and then missed selling, so I went back to the sales side.
You missed selling. That's a tough field, selling. Which business school did you go to?
I went to Columbia,
Oh, right here in the city.
right here in the city.
So you both were New York City
Yes.
through and blue. Okay. So you guys are smart. I mean, Yale and Columbia are not easy to get to and then to finish the programs. And it sounds like you kept, in your case, what was your favorite sport where you were in graduate school?
Actually, of all things, I ended up the coxsman for the men's crew team.
For the men's crew team?
Yeah.
Because you were too good for the women
I
and
was
there was
loud.
no women?
No, I was a coxsman, so I just had to yell at them.
Oh.
She's good at that.
But
She
it was
yells
just
at me.
good at
It was-
yelling.
Yes. It was an interesting thing because it was in an 8-boat with men from different schools. So everyone had different styles and training, and you have a very short time in a year to figure it all out. They rowed up at the Harlem River.
Oh, okay.
I just yell at them.
Yes. Go. I mean, you've got to be in
Stroke.
rhythm, right?
Yeah, you got to keep their pace going and tell them when to speed up.
Yeah, that's an Olympic sport, isn't it?
Absolutely.
All right.
U.S. is very good.
And then we
because
had
I
some great
remember-
women boats this year.
I
So.
remember seeing that. That's tremendous. Besides being very active, were you also a fan of sports?
Yes, I grew up in a family that was very passionate about playing, but also a big baseball family. So my father remembered his grandfather taking him to baseball games, and in the 80s, I was very fortunate. We went to a few of the World Series, which wasn't too shabby, but
That's
also
great.
other games, and meticulously did the box scores and the whole. Back in the old days, when the screen wasn't as fancy as it is now, so they couldn't change it quite as quickly.
So which World Series did you go to?
I went to a few of them actually.
Yankees? The
Yeah,
Mets?
Yankees. Mets
Oh.
weren't in the World Series back then.
They made it to the World Series eventually.
Eventually, but not back
Okay,
then.
but so you were back
This is
in
back in the 80s, like when I
back
was a
in
little
Mickey
kid.
Mantle days? Or
No. Reggie Jackson.
Becky Jackson days. All right. Oh, Greg Nettles.
Yes.
All right. All right. Oh, those were great World Series.
Yeah, they were great, and there was
my
a bunch of
God.
years.
See any of Becky Jackson's home runs?
Yes. I mean, he was fantastic.
Kimberly mentioned you guys hooked up again because you discovered your kids were going to the same school.
And then we ended up working on a school project together. She is a manager extraordinaire and the only one to have taken the school benefit and actually made a profit and had everything done on Excel spreadsheets and has changed how it's been done since. And she dragged me into that with her kicking and screaming. But that's how I knew that she would be the perfect partner when I had the original idea, because she's so efficient, she's so organized, she's so smart, she's so on top of every detail, and I'm the opposite.
Right. Well, you need a good team. You had the idea to create Excelle Sports, and you recruited Kat and a few other people.
Kat's my co-founder, and then we have another partner who ironically went to the same grade school. And we're not the same year either. So
None of us were
it
the same
is
year.
ironic that we all ended up with boys at the same school.
That is a very great coincidence that all three of you went to the same grade school. What's the name of that school?
Spence.
Spence. Oh, geez. That's a great school.
It's a school where the main thing you're taught as a little kid is to be confident that you can do anything you want. And that's way before the sort of empowering girls and listening to Kat. I mean, you were an only child, so you were the first son, sort of, because you were the first son. And I was the first child, so I was the first son in my dad's mind. He had me out on the, playing ice hockey.
So being firstborn was an advantage in
Absolutely.
your cases.
Well, it's funny, just as she said that, it made me think about the fact that we were basically told you can do anything you want. It wasn't
Nobody told us otherwise.
like, oh, you're girls.
So parents were ahead of their time.
Well, but it's just that they saw us as boys. So,
Okay, they saw you as boys.
I mean, we weren't girls. It wasn't sort of like, oh, let your brothers do that. You're
I'm
girls.
sure they're thrilled to have grandchildren.
Yes.
Okay, let's go back to 2015. You looked the field over. Geez, women are really underrepresented on sports. The only women's sports that I know of really is golf, because it is covered on the news. I think women's basketball is covered, but I think only when the college things, UConn is always winning.
Right.
And what other women's sports? Tennis, of course.
Yep. And
That's
then
about
women's
And
soccer.
Well, women's soccer. Right?
But that's
World
only
Cup.
been recently. I mean, I would say in the last 5 to 10 years, you've seen a lot more of it.
Oh, yeah, because it's a big controversy. The women's soccer team is such much better than the men's.
Right.
And the women discover they haven't been paid equivalently to the men. That confused me. Obviously, you could go to Excelle Sports and maybe get the lowdown of what is going on there.
Yeah.
Well, that's what hits the mainstream media, so that's where you'll get that, where we'll talk about players, and they just 2 weekends ago finished their season. So they
National
had
Women's
National
Soccer
Women's Soccer League, so they had their finals. So we covered each semifinal game and the whole thing.
What you brought up is an interesting point that we found in all our research. The women's sports, most of what was being covered on women athletes were negative things. So
The controversies.
Hope Solo, domestic violence issue.
The soccer player.
Brittany Griner gets in trouble.
What sport is she?
had
She's
a
basketball.
She's a basketball player, but she got in a domestic situation, and or Abby Wambach with the DWI. An awful lot of time is spent on who they're dating, who they're not dating.
Oh, so they're in the gossip columns.
So there's very little positive covered on women athletes. And if you look at male athletes, you look at a top basketball player, one of the best known ones, you know what he eats for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. You know how many kids he has, who his wife is, everything, where he went to college. No one knows anything like that about women because it's not covered. So we need to tell those stories, and we need to create a landscape where people know the female athletes, whether runners or soccer players or basketball.
Okay, so you're not limited to any one particular sport, any sport that has women.
Right.
And I think you go, like I mentioned, from high school, college, post-college, professionals, Olympics.
We'll do profiles on a high school kid, but we're not covering, if we cover high school teams, that's really broad for our very small team. So we're starting really with college and then professional and Olympic. And with the Olympics having just passed,
Right.
that gave us a breadth of sports that we hadn't covered prior, such as archery.
I'm interested in the mechanics of starting a new firm. I mean, here you are, you got a great idea, you got a team. It doesn't happen overnight. You got to put a business plan together. You got to go, well, how do we pay ourselves? So tell us a little bit of the mechanics of starting up a startup.
It involves a kitchen table. It involves a coffee shop right near our kids' school. It involves a lot of hours and a lot of notepads and pads and figuring out what the idea is and bringing it down to a core focus and what.
Your mission statement.
Yep.
Exactly.
The
So
mission.
what is your core mission?
Our core mission is to be the go-to source for all of women's sports coverage and additional resources around women's sports like post-college leagues, a whole community of female athletes, coaches, fans around the world.
That's a mouthful. That's
Okay.
big. Okay, but you open up officially February this year.
Yes.
How do you open up? Did you have a parade? Did you have a
We did.
ticket?
It was a very small one in our office, but
An
we
office?
did
About
have
8
a
people, but you know.
parade. But we, no, it took us almost a year to really work on the idea. And then Kat and I scraped together every penny we could because we needed to build the site to launch in
The
a big,
website.
yes, before we could raise any money. Because two women starting a women's sports site on paper without any real site to look at was never going to fly on the fundraising.
So does that mean you needed investors?
Well, we did, but to get that, we had to actually have a website. So
We built a website with a
Oh, I saw it.
Yeah.
This is
With a team of
spectacular
designers.
website.
Thank you.
Thank you. And Kim had built a website before I had not, so it was very eye-opening of how exacting you have to be for the coding and all that. And now I'm scared to say I actually can code a little.
Yeah.
I've learned it. But
Got to
yeah.
be open architecture or whatever
But,
it is.
right, and as you learn, as you mentioned earlier, you continue to learn, and this is part of that process.
That's right. That's right.
To fix the site when you need to and all that good stuff. But so we built the site and we launched it February 3rd, which is National Women's and Girls Sports
So
Day.
you picked that date deliberately.
Yes.
It was a little bit lucky because it happened to be that
Oh,
that
cool.
National Day. I think the day before was maybe National
Okay.
Peanut Butter Day or
Okay.
something.
What did happen after that? I said, I think this might work.
We were unbelievably encouraged by a number of things. One, before we actually launched it, I particularly was spending a lot of time on LinkedIn, trying to sort of reach out to athletes, coaches, marketers, Nike, Adidas, whoever, saying, I have a startup related to girls and women's sports, and I'd try and connect. But nothing solid. And some were Olympic athletes, some were pros, some were. And within a month, I had 20 Olympic athletes connect back to me on LinkedIn saying, not only connecting, but a number of them saying, what are you doing? That sounds great. Coaches, student athletes, marketers. And I said, all right, wow, I think we might have something here. We also got an unbelievably positive response from people who we wanted to either help us as consultants or employees, early editors, people who were willing to really give up a lot to get paid very little to come work with us.
Is there stock options? I mean, that's how some of the startups, especially in Silicon Valley.
Yeah. No, our earliest employees get options.
Okay.
Yep, or equity.
It's interesting that it was social media to LinkedIn that you grew the company.
Right.
which
It's a different
is
world.
Very
Didn't
different world from when
necessarily-
I grew up.
We didn't necessarily grow the company, but it gave us the confidence of these were people who absolutely had no requirement to accept my link,
Okay.
but they did, which told me that there were, if thousands of people within 4 months had accepted that, there was interest there.
Yeah,
and
yeah.
they were around the world. There was the national swimming coach in Iran. I mean, just an unbelievable sort of selection
Okay.
of people.
We also sent a survey out to friends and family, and it was allowed to be passed on with some very specific questions on it. And when the feedback came in, we saw, visually, very graphically, that this was a need.
Definitely, there's a need, but finding all these people and connecting to them could be a full-time job. And your website, you have all these profiles, you have ambassadors, you have coaches, council.
Yeah.
The ambassadors are very interesting. Just collecting their photographs must have been a task in itself, and you got
We generally get them to
beautifully
send them.
arranged.
Yeah, they generally send their bios and photographs and are excited to get involved because so few people in the media reach out to female athletes. So the fact that we want to cover them, we want to talk to them, they're thrilled to talk to us. The Olympians who, you're in the Olympics every 4 years, and then after those 2 weeks, everything sort of dies down for you. We have one of our editors is actually an Olympic swimmer. She was in 5 Olympic trials. She won a medal in Beijing, and she's our lifestyle editor now. But she really has done an amazing job of telling the story of being an Olympian in her own first person.
Yeah.
And we've sort of built that now into athletes, interviewing athletes.
Hi, I'm Adele Jackson with Excelle Sports, and I'm here with world champion and Olympic gold medalist Allison Felix. Sprinting is a really explosive, powerful sport. And I just want to know, how much do you squat?
How much do I squat? Let's see, I haven't maxed out in quite some time. Right now, I do reps at maybe 270, somewhere around there.
Wow. 70, that's a lot. And how much do you weigh?
I weigh 125 pounds.
That's crazy.
Yeah, I gotta be, like you said, the explosiveness and that power, from sprinting. Even though I don't really look like it, I still gotta make sure that I can, be as strong as the other girls.
Yeah. Thank you so much for talking with me.
Okay.
You're trying to grow a company where every employee feels like they have ownership because you want them to feel that this is their baby, they have an interest in it. Obviously, that's the atmosphere and the environment you want to create.
Yep.
So how many of these people do you have?
We have 8 full-time employees, including ourselves, and we have 2 part-time employees as well.
Okay.
Right now.
20.
And then about 20 to 25 freelancers.
Freelancers.
And the freelancers, because we're based in New York, but we don't want to be New York centric, they really help us tell the stories from Minnesota or California or
Even abroad.
Or I was going to say South Africa, England. We have one of our writers is an Indian woman who is in grad school in Chicago, but spending this semester in South Africa. So she's writing a few South African sports stories.
It sounds like this is storytelling, filmmaking a little bit, to tell the stories, to video. Another popular way that could happen is sponsoring events, actual races, of doing either a swimming event or a running event or a squash
We've
event.
sponsored 1 lacrosse event
Tournament.
so far. I think it was high school age children. And then that's it so far. We will get there. It's in our growth plan. It's a question of power.
that costs money. We are still raising money.
You're still raising.
So-
Well, interesting. You probably heard of Virgin Sports.
Yes.
Yes.
Because it was big in the news because they acquired Mary Wittenberg,
Yep.
the very powerful woman in sports, long time member or president of Roadrunners, and
Right.
she grew that company,
She did a
Roadrunners,
fantastic
fantastically. And Virgin Sports is still, though she's been there for a year, it's still on the ground floor. But one of the things that I notice about them is they're very interested in growing by acquiring. Is it possible that Virgin Sport one day might come to you and say, we want you to be part of our team?
It's possible. I think Kat and I feel very strongly that we want to build Excelle, build our company until it is really fabulous, fully baked, what we want it to be, what our vision is. If you sell too soon. Unfortunately, your vision gets subsumed into the buyer, and so we'd have to see where we were at that point. That being said, they are more than welcome to invest in us.
Excellent. You know Mary?
We would love to meet Mary, and I know she's a very close friend of Kat's aunt, who's a sports photographer covering mostly running.
They know each other, yes.
Yes,
I actually
yes.
met her once because of her, but not, it was during a race, and as you know, at the end of a race, there's a lot going on.
That's right.
So
That's right.
she wasn't really focused
That's right.
on
Yeah,
it.
he keeps active in running in road runners races. Obviously, she's growing her brand at the purchase. It hasn't taken off yet.
Yep.
They've been working on it for a long time. But I could see some synergy between the two organizations. Who knows?
Yeah.
So in closing, in terms of sports, is there an event that you personally are looking forward in participating, a marathon or a swim meet or a tennis court or a tennis match?
I would say that I am really looking forward to getting back into squash. I've had some pretty serious back and neck problems thanks to squash and running with discs. So I'm hoping that in the next year I can get back and play on a squash team for the fun of it.
That's your love, squash.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, I mean, ice hockey probably gets #1, but squash is more of my
Okay.
my
And
playing
Kat,
sport.
And Kat, what about you? Is there
Well,
a
I had knee
event?
surgery 6 weeks ago. So I'll watch the New York City Marathon in a few weeks because I think I'm really good at watching it.
Okay.
But I still play a lot of golf, and I did my knee playing tennis, so we'll see how fast I run back into that one because the side-to-side is not so good for it. But, well, the golf will keep me busy for a while.
All right. Where do you play golf?
I play out on Long Island at a little 9-hole course.
Oh, great, great. Was there anything else that we wanted to cover before we wrap up?
I mean, we could talk about Excelle Sports for hours.
All
so
right.
thank
It's
you
your
for having
baby.
us.
It is
Well,
our baby.
Congratulations on
Thank
getting
you.
it off the ground.
Thank
That's
you.
no small feat. Good luck on that.
Thank you.
We wish you great success on,
Thank you.
on all these things. Thank you so much for coming in.
Thank
Thanks
you for
having
having us.
us.
It's a pleasure.
Nice. Thank you, Will, very much.